As I discussed in this first section of this, my project started off with holding coaches accountable for their actions, hoping that their abuse would not be swept under the rug. As I began my research, I discussed current coaches in power like Maggie Haney, Chai Han, and Al Fong. Through my research, I've noticed that there were so many more elite coaches than I thought were harming children. There are so many coaches who are currently coaching, regardless of if they are on the temporary suspended list by Safe Sport or not. We have learned, of course, that although Safe Sport is tended to protect young athletes, that there have been a lot of flaws in the organization since starting up. Regardless of if a coach is or isn't on the list won't necessarily stop said abuse. Being aware of signs of abuse is the only way that we will be able to fully stop said abuse from occurring. Because of this, I will always continue to expose coaches who I feel are currently harming athletes like Chi Han, Maggie Haney, and Mary Lee Tracy. There is also gyms like Azarian, Everest, Parkettes, and Legacy Elite that should be shut down for good. Their coaches and culture of the gym are not acceptable. I will always expose them as long as I can until justice is also served. Alongside, knowing the signs of a toxic coach is knowing the signs of a toxic parent. Any parent that takes their child to the coaches or gyms that I've recently said must take full accountability of their child's safety. These gyms are not safe and should not be accepting children under their care. It's a shame for these parents who take their children there because they know at this point that these gyms aren't safe and that these coaches aren't safe either. I'm disappointed in the parents that do not leave these coaches or gyms if their child is hurt. They know that the gyms are bad at this point, and they are just neglecting the child's safety. As I stated earlier, there are so many good gyms out there, so providing the excuse that there is nowhere else to go no longer works. I understand that relocating is hard, but there is always a way to get your child out of abuse. As parents, you must speak up and make that change if it is needed. If there was one thing that I want people to take away from this project, it is that I want people to know what a healthy coach is and understand that gymnasts are children that don't always know how to speak up for themselves. Gymnasts are children that are exposed to bullying, harassment, physical abuse, and emotional heartbreak in the sport. Parents must be there for their children emotionally, like Shawn Johnson's parents did. Parents should seek help if something doesn't feel right, like Riley McCusker's mother did. Coaches should be there for athletes mentally, like Simone Biles' coaches did. Coaches should seek help for gymnast health and well-being because at the end of the day, they are children and cannot always make ethical decisions on their own. But most importantly, for our sport to change, the athlete must be valued and listened to. If they feel they are being abused or are worried for their safety, they must be listened to by a parent, guardian, coach, or official. We must provide more education and awareness in USAG for our newer generations to know that it is okay to speak up if something isn't right and that you will be heard. We must provide more education on eating disorders and injury awareness, like Nancy Marshall did. And coaches that have changed with the sport should be a role model to those who may be showing toxic traits. When I was doing my research, I came across a statement that Steve Nuno made back in the 90s, stating that a gymnast is not sheltered by being placed in a glass bottle. But in all honesty, that is exactly what happened over the past couple of decades. Children are children, and gymnasts are children. These gymnasts are placed in a glass bottle in shiny leotards full of sequins. The bottle glistens as those outside of the bottle watch and admire the moves that they make on the beam or on the uneven bars. While in the bottle, the child is sheltered from the outside world of sexual predators, stalkers, and education on eating disorders. But as the past decade has come upon us, something happened. The glass bottle that was glistening for decades with the USGF witnessed a crack with USAG. A small crack that was Larry Nassar, but slowly the crack became bigger. Then more cracks began to form, and suddenly the glass shattered. Only then were gymnasts forced out of their glass bottles and thrown into the harsh world that is the real world. The bottle is now shattered. The image of USAG is now shattered. Though there are still remnants of this glass bottle intact, the main foundation of USAG and former USGF is now gone. Gymnasts are no longer sheltered as much as they were before. Gymnasts and parents are now speaking up, and USAG is broken. This is what has become of our national governing body. There are so many things that must be done to glue the glass bottles back together. But the glue is pricey, taking a lot of time and effort to be made to hold these pieces back together. Do we really want to recover our glass bottles? Or do we want to create a new platform where open transparency, no longer bottles, is where children are kept? Only then will those in USAG finally realize that gymnasts will no longer be stored in glass bottles.